Hello again, and welcome to Part B of our Unit 3, Part 2 presentations. We just discussed the limitations of gold standard research and some solutions to control for that. We're now going to take a look at a visual called Education's Compromise. And the main idea of this visual is that in education or in practice for behavior modification or any kind of service provision of this nature with teaching and learning, there's more to it than just evidence-based practice. So you'll see here that evidence-based education or teaching can come from both empirical evidence, which is the research that we were just discussing, scientifically based research and empirical information, but it must also come from professional wisdom. What we mean here is that we need to work, try things out, and identify what's most effective in our individual experience. In addition to this, we need to look at the idea of consensus. Does our leadership align with the interventions and programming that we're trying to put in place? Do we have colleagues who support us in these interventions? What is the view of our setting on the practices that we're implementing? And in addition to this, are they evidence-based? So the idea of compromise is a balance of these two things to develop evidence-based practices. Here we have a list of guidelines for consuming research. So as you're going through studies and research, be sure to be mindful of these guidelines. You may want to ask questions about the players, the place, and the time in the studies and compare these answers to your situation. So you're looking for three different things: acceptability, that is, that your leadership is in agreement with the intervention or suggestion; robustness, the idea that the intervention lasts; and then there are actually two more. One of those would be effectiveness, and the last one would be sustainability, which does go along with robustness. Can we make this work? So all of those factors are important, and when you're comparing a research study or another piece of evidence, you want to look at those in the study and compare those factors to the ones that you're encountering in your own situation. When it comes to intervention research for learning or growth, you want to take a look and keep an eye on a couple different things. One of them would be authentic measurement. How are we measuring growth or success? We want to make sure that we're looking at instructional strategies. That's something different from intervention. And then identify whether each one or either of them would apply to your current setting, because in each setting, these things might look different. You also want to keep a close eye on something, in a study, if something is taught to the experimental group, but not to the control group. You want to really look for solid research design. And obviously, we're also looking for measures of retention, generalization, and application. So, can the students retain the knowledge? Can they generalize it to other settings? And that would be students or clients. And then ultimately, can it be applied? Can they apply it? Do they use it? Is it useful? Once again, we talked about effect size, an indicator of practical significance. Effect size is very important to look for in addition to the p-value that you may see in research studies. So keep an eye on effect size and you'll see some guidelines for quantitative indicators there, 0.3, 0.5, and 0.8. Then ultimately, you're going to be also looking for outliers, very important. For whom did the intervention or practice not work? And then think about how this could apply to your setting or how it might apply to the implementation and generalization of the intervention that you're examining. Very important to keep these in mind as you're looking over research studies. So in order to put some of these concepts into practice, we have an assignment for the unit, and it is called a 2-article critique assignment. You'll see that it's based on bibliography. So to find this assignment, you'll go to Unit 3, Readings and Bibliographies. You'll select one of the bibliography lists, and you want to make sure that this is aligned or has some connection to your action plan and your logic model projects for this course. From the bibliography list that you select, you will choose 2 articles. You'll find them in the UNC Library online. Let me know if you have issues or difficulties with that, but they should be in there. And then finally, you'll be writing a reflection. There are 3 major sections for this reflection. It's in APA format, and you'll see here the 3 sections. First one, you'll want to review the studies, provide a synopsis. That's about 1 paragraph for each study. What is the study about? What were the results? You'll include 1 paragraph of critique for each study, and that includes summarizing strengths and weaknesses. And then finally, you'll include about 2 paragraphs total for an implication section. How can you use the information for your logic model or for your action plan? What is useful about the information for your practice and why? So total, that'll be 2, 4, 6-ish paragraphs in APA format. We'll take a look here on Unit 3. You can see Unit 3 readings and bibliographies. Under bibliography, we have these different options, and we'll use meta-analysis for something else. So you'll follow the instructions provided in this presentation. Take a look through these bibliography documents. For instance, we've got one list here on peer tutoring. You can see that there are a lot of different articles, many articles. So please take a look, see what might be interesting to you. Some of these are older or newer, and they all have different areas of emphasis. This gives you a chance to explore a little bit. The next area that we'll focus on in this presentation is the What Works websites. This is very important for an assignment, a Safari assignment that we'll be doing in particular during this unit. So a What Works website, you may be familiar with these. It's really a cookbook for practitioners, and what we mean by that is that there are a lot of different recipes, which would be considered evidence-based practices or interventions put together into one website. And the website will provide a summary of evidence and ideas about how to scaffold for the implementation in your setting. So it's kind of a how-to. This is a good place to go if you're wondering about evidence-based research for your area. So you'll see here there are 4 websites that you can peruse. And in particular, we've got the first 2 as Doing What Works and Finding What Works. You'll want to look through these and see if you can identify some interventions or practices or ideas that are somehow connected to your action plan, your logic model, the main ideas what you're trying to accomplish at your site or in your setting or situation. And there are 2 assignments that are connected to these websites. The first one is a little bit lengthier, so it's a 1-page description or preference paper that's in APA format. And you'll be talking about all 4 websites listed here. So you want to identify the main focuses, pros and cons of each website, and then at the end you want to include your preference. Which one is your favorite, or which one did you prefer, and why? For our second assignment, this is just a topic preference assignment. You're going to review in particular the first 2 websites listed here, Doing What Works and Finding What Works. And then you'll select 5 evidence-based practices that you want to learn more about. This is to help to prepare you for the skill building workshop, which is one of the major course projects. And you'll upload a document with those 5 practices. You can include links for those practices from the What Works websites under topic preference assignments. So that's just 5 practices, just a list. And as mentioned, this is in preparation for your skill building workshop assignment. So the reason that you're identifying 5 and submitting them to me is because I really want to kind of open the mind to the different ideas that might be helpful for the skill building workshop project, and just make sure that we're both on the same track, the right track, and that we're getting an idea of which interventions might be used for the project. So if you need information on the major course assignment skill building workshop, you will go to the rubric instructions document in the peer review form under major course assignments. So you can see for modules, go to major course assignments, skill building workshop. See it's worth 100 points. And there are two documents here. The first document is a peer review sheet, because you will be completing peer reviews on one another's submissions near the end of the course. And then here we have the instructions for the skill building workshop project. So this will provide you with information. This is a PowerPoint presentation project, and this will be coming from the What Works websites. So you really want to choose information from those websites and then answer each of the questions for the content area. So you'll be picking an evidence-based practice, detailed for application, and you'll be delivering all that in a PowerPoint. So you'll be submitting to me for this unit 5 potential evidence-based practices that you find on the What Works websites that you might like to use for this workshop assignment. Then I'll provide some feedback and comments here in Canvas, and that will be helpful as we're getting ready. The goal of the assignment for this skill building workshop is to communicate to fellow students useful and practical information directly relating to instruction and intervention, particularly in your setting, using evidence-based practice and research. And the hope is that this will also be helpful for you in your current and future practice. So this will be due early in Unit 5. Take a look at the schedule to find due dates there. That'll give you some time to provide feedback to peers on their submissions. Then we'll be taking a look at the concept of meta-analysis in this unit as well. Meta-analysis is studying and combining findings of many different studies and pulling them all together into a document. This has been a popular practice for about 30 years. Meta-analysis focuses a great deal on effect size to provide practical information on application of interventions. This is something that's very important for the work that we'll be doing in this class in particular, so meta-analysis is very helpful. It may combine group design studies, single subject design, mixed methods. You may see some of those. So many different kinds of studies coming together and then drawing conclusions based on the evidence in the studies. Meta-analysis identifies interventions that have been defined as most effective. What are the topics and terms in the field? What has not yet been covered? So it's really a large review of research in a given area. To conduct a meta-analysis, you'll first want to define an outcome. For instance, let's say that the outcome is on-task behavior, whatever that may be, and you can operationally define that in more detail in your analysis. But if you were to conduct a meta-analysis, you'll be defining that outcome for a particular population, really honing in. Could be elementary age students, for example. You'll define your parameters as you're looking at studies to accept or reject in your meta-analysis. Typically between 7 and 15 year time periods are chosen. You'll want to say, we will only accept this type of study over this period of years, and this kind of quality in the research, here's what we're looking for. And then you'll define different interventions that emerge in the studies. You'll sort them out by type. So you're really saying what's working, what are we finding, what's not working. You'll be looking for effect size, of course, in those studies. You might be looking for averages, for effect sizes. Putting studies together that address particular interventions and then working through making sure that you're looking at those averages. And that'll allow you to reach conclusions. So you can consider combining studies with different interventions focused on the same outcome. There are a number of ways that you can put together evidence in the meta-analysis process. But definitely keeping an eye on those effect sizes. You can compare the interventions, rank them, really identify the interventions that are strong or less strong based on the evidence that you found. And finally, as always, make sure that the information is taken in context and that your individual factors are considered. So what works in one place may not work in another place, but meta-analysis is helpful to gain a big picture idea. We'll look at this a little bit more in Part C.